Welcome to Caveman Bricks, Builds, and More. I am the Caveman, and I am all alone. I am not doing a build video today. Instead, what I am doing is, I guess you'd call it a theory video. One of my building partners, Judah's wanting to take a break from some of our Harry Potter builds. I'm not quite ready to do some of the other fun builds that I've got planned with the other kids yet. And it's almost April, which means we are getting a brand new Harry Potter movie soon. So I wanted to kind of talk about some of the things that I've noticed, some observations I have, and do kind of a more video where I'm talking more about this upcoming movie. Of course, this is the third movie in the Fantastic Beasts series. Movie number 1 is Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Movie number 2 is Fantastic Beasts, Crimes of Grindelwald. And now we're on movie number 3, Fantastic Beasts, Secrets of Dumbledore, where supposedly all of Dumbledore's secrets will be revealed to us. Kind of very much a throwback to the Rita Skeeter book that we find about. So there's a few things that I kind of wanted to touch on. I'm not going to be doing like a trailer review or going shot by shot, but from the little things that we've found out from some of those things. I do have a friend, Thomas, who's been on my channel a couple of times. He has got an amazing YouTube channel. He has been breaking down all the trailers. I definitely think that you should go check him out. I will put a link to him in the comments so that you can go and check out those because he can do a much better job of it than me. Instead, I wanted to kind of talk about Credence and who he might be and the wand of the Muggle that we keep seeing. Muggle, of course, being Newt's friend, Jacob Kowalski. If you haven't seen it, he is shown in the trailer to be given a wand by Newt, who says it's from Dumbledore. And then there's another trailer where you see him, I don't know if using the wand is the right word, but the wand is certainly producing magic. And I've brought my Deathly Hallows Elder Wand pen here to help me enunciate things. But my first theory, I want to talk about Credence before I get to the wand, because I've got a lot of things going through my mind about Credence. I think perhaps one of the biggest theories about Credence is that maybe before she died, Ariana, Dumbledore's sister, had a child. So let's kind of unpack that. Dumbledore's father went to jail fairly early on in life because some Muggle boys were kind of picking on and harassing his sister. The father went to go kind of like take care of the boys, attack them using magic. The Ministry cracked down on him, sent him to Azkaban, and that's where he went and died. So that left Dumbledore, his brother Aberforth, and his sister Ariana at home with their mother. And this was late 1800s. So it's a very different world than the world of the 1990s where Harry Potter takes place. Which is a very different world than 2020 where we now live. So things were probably a lot harder for Dumbledore's mother, even though she was a witch. So I think that left a lot of things to Dumbledore and his brother Aberforth to kind of take care of for the family. Dumbledore becomes very good friends with Grindelwald, who is visiting his aunt that lives in Godric's Hollow where the Dumbledores live. That they moved there after their father was arrested. And they kind of come up with this plan to gather the Deathly Hallows and kind of rule the magical and Muggle worlds. Except that Dumbledore has second thoughts, and that leads to a huge battle between Dumbledore, Aberforth, and Grindelwald. And no one knows whose magic caused what to happen, but somehow in the process, Ariana dies. Which then leads to Dumbledore's mother dying somewhere either right before that or right around the same time. Anyhow, so that just leaves Aberforth and Albus, and that's it. So the theory is that maybe before that battle happens, perhaps, maybe, Ariana had a child, and that child is Credence. And the reason why he was sent to the U.S. is because Albus and Aberforth didn't know how to raise a child, a baby. Albus obviously has a lot going on with fighting Grindelwald. Aberforth is doing the thing with the goats, whatever that is. So here's the big issue with that. According to what we know of what's out there on Wizarding World and all these different things that we can kind of gather details from, Ariana supposedly died in 1899, and Credence was born in 1901. So that leaves a 2-year gap in between her death and his birth. So that would be pretty hard for that to be her child. Another prevailing theory is that Albus and Aberforth and Ariana's father had another child, maybe escaped from Azkaban and fathered another child, maybe had an extramarital affair and had another child, and that's Credence. But again, he died well before Ariana did, and if Credence wasn't supposed to be born until 1901, that would be very difficult for him to have had that child as Credence. Now, maybe he could have had a child and Credence could have been his grandson, but that's a lot of stretching. The other big theory is that maybe it's Aberforth's child. Maybe Aberforth had a child and that this is his child. And, you know, we don't have a whole lot of backstory of Aberforth Dumbledore other than he's really obsessed with goats. That's his Patronus. He loves goats. I always kind of got a weird vibe about the goat thing. I just don't feel like that fits Aberforth's story. He is very much a recluse. He's very much very bitter. Very much, you know, in the movies they even say like, oh, Harry says he's given up all hope, and Hermione kind of has to convince him that he hasn't given up hope. So I don't think that quite fits the story of Aberforth. And I think we're going to see that in the movie because Aberforth is in this movie. There is most definitely a clip of Albus at the Hog's Head that Aberforth owns. And I think he's there visiting his brother, maybe trying to make amends. Who knows what he's doing there. So, if we can eliminate it being Ariana's kid, and we can eliminate it being the dad's kid, and we can eliminate it being Aberforth's kid, and it's certainly not Dumbledore, Albus's kid, then who are we left with? Because that's all the Dumbledores that we know of. So that makes things a little bit more difficult. And there are some stories out there. I think one very popular fan fiction, as a matter of fact, and I know it's very popular because I'm reading it right now and it has its own website and everything, is the James Potter series. And it's a series, and this is going to be a little bit of spoiler. Of course, all this stuff is pretty old. The James Potter series follows Harry's oldest son, James Sirius Potter, as he goes to Hogwarts. And in that series, Ariana did have a child that Dumbledore kind of like put his positive feelings about everything that him and Grindelwald had built together into the child, which kind of made him like this negative Dumbledore. It's a whole weird thing. Anyhow, so there are lots of fan theories out there, fan stories, that Ariana did have a child. And if that ends up being the case in this movie, I will not be shocked. I do not think that it is beyond J.K. Rowling to kind of edit the history of these books. I think we kind of saw that. A lot of people got really upset with Crimes of Grindelwald, with McGonagall being at Hogwarts as a professor so early in the history of the school when she shouldn't have been. Which is a whole other thing. But I don't think that J.K. Rowling is afraid to say, well, I know I said that she died in 1899. I know I said that he was born in 1901, but, yeah, that's why, you know, she might, maybe, you know, she'll come up with some backstory that the baby was frozen for 2 years, or who knows. So if that ends up being the case, I will not be shocked. However, I do have my own theory, and it comes from this book here. I don't know if you've ever read this book. It comes in a cool little set. I think there's a version that is not like a matching set, but mine is a matching set. It came with 3 books, Quidditch Through the Ages, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and The Tales of Beedle and Bard. And The Tales of Beedle and Bard are basically witch and wizard folk tales kind of thing. Kind of like our Cinderella and the Little Mermaid and all those kind of things. You know, they're supposed to help you learn a lesson, and to, you know, and they tell them to their kids so that they can, you know, like a fable, like Aesop's Fables. Aesop's Fables is a very good comparative to what this book is supposed to be. Now, this particular book that you can actually go to the store and buy was written by J.K. Rowling, and it actually says, and Albus Dumbledore. So what it is that there's 5 stories in here, and then after each story is footnotes or notes from Albus Dumbledore, kind of explaining his version of the story, and as he has transcribed it precisely from the ancient runes, because witches and wizards have changed these stories because they didn't like some of the narratives. The first one in here is about loving and respecting muggles. Well, that wasn't a popular thing, you know, when Beedle and Bard were writing their stories. So the story had changed over the years. So this is the Dumbledore transcribed from the ancient runes with his notes book. So the first 3 don't really give us much into what I want to talk about. But number 4 is one that we know is mentioned by Ron, especially in the movie, and it is Babbity Rabbity and Her Cackling Stump. And it's an interesting little tale, and one of the things that it mentions in this tale is about how you can't bring people back from the dead. And he says, you know, it's very popular among parents to read to kids so that kids understand that magical parents can't just wave their wand and bring their pets back from the dead. And then he kind of says, and I'll talk about this more after the tale of the 3 brothers. And then he also mentions the thing about wands that we'll come back to when we're talking about the wand and the muggle. I want to kind of get into this thing because then the next story is the tale of the 3 brothers, which is probably one of the most famous stories of the whole book. And certainly one of my most favorite parts of Harry Potter is the tale of the 3 brothers. And certainly kind of is the overtone of what all 7 books were, was this tale of the 3 brothers. And in here, he talks extensively about how something like the Elder Wand, the Invisibility Cloak, and the Resurrection Stone could not exist. They just couldn't exist. They're not real. They never appeared. There was, you know, like a famous wand, but it wasn't like this crazy thing. And we'll get more into that about how it could take on its master's wishes and have residual and all that stuff. But he also in here talks about how in the previous story of Babbity Rabbity, he talked about how necromancy is not real and how you can't bring people back from the dead. And he's very specifically talking about the Resurrection Stone and how no one has ever successfully been able to do necromancy. So what I find interesting about that, and why I bring up the Tales of Beedle and Bard, this little-known little book that J.K. Rowling kind of included as a set that seems to have been pretty important to the last 2 movies, is that obviously the Elder Wand was real. The Resurrection Stone, he had it. He had wore it. And the Cloak of Invisibility, he knew very well was real. He had it from a long time. He had borrowed it from James, Harry's dad, gave it to Harry, knew very well that the Cloak of Invisibility was real, and yet still would write in here Of course none of that stuff is real. Invisibility cloaks are just something that witches and wizards come up with, and they're not infallible, and there's no such thing as an unbeatable wand, and nothing can bring anyone back from the dead. There's no such thing as any of this. It's all just a great fantasy. Even though, also, knowing that he had sought them out as a child, not as a child, but as a young man with Grindelwald. And Grindelwald had gotten the Elder Wand that Dumbledore won from him in their famous duel. So, clearly Dumbledore is trying to, I don't know, throw people off the trail. I don't know what the point of that would be. But in there, he also talks about how necromancy can't be real, how you can't do any of that. So if he's lying about the Deathly Hallows, maybe, just maybe, he's also lying about the necromancy. And maybe he has personal experience with it. And maybe, using his sister's Obscurus, he tried to bring his sister back using his own DNA and ended up accidentally creating a child that became Credence. Just maybe. That's my theory on it. That's what I think is going on. I think that Dumbledore thought that he could go into a very illegal, very difficult realm of wizardry during a time where he was not afraid of to use dark magic, during a time that he was very much under the influence of Grindelwald, and tried to bring his sister back to life. And it didn't go the way he expected it to, and he didn't know what to do with this boy child. And in a way, it kind of is his son, but in a way, it's not. It's Credence. And I think that perhaps that's why we see Newt with the Obscurus in the first movie. Not that I think that it's Ariana's, but I think that Dumbledore had asked him to study it so that perhaps if he wanted to try again, he could. So I think that Credence was supposed to be a resurrected sister of Dumbledore. I think it was his way of trying to make up to Aberforth, to right his wrongs, and it failed horribly, and instead he ended up with this baby that becomes Credence. And that's why Grindelwald tells him that he's a Dumbledore. Of course, the other possibility is Grindelwald's lying, which, sure, that's a great possibility as well. But I just wanted to float that theory out there because I do think that there might be some reason why J.K. Rowling included that in here. Because I don't think she just included things in the Tales of the Three Brothers for no reason. Which brings me to the wand. Jacob Kowalski's wand that he has. Again, going back to Babbity, Rabbity, and the Cackling Stump, and then continuing on in the Three Brothers, he talks quite a bit about wands. He talks extensively about the thought of an Elder Wand, and kind of tracing it through history and all these different people that might have held the Elder Wand or thought it was the Elder Wand. So he does say in Babbity Rabbity that Muggles cannot produce magic on their own. It's just not possible. They can't do it. In order for a Muggle to be a witch or a wizard, they had to have had somewhere in their family tree a witch or a wizard. Now, it can be way far back, but somewhere they had to have had a witch or a wizard. Otherwise, if they're just completely Muggle, they can never produce magic. What they could do is produce random things from a wand, because a wand in itself is a magical thing and is a conduit for magic for witches and wizards. And so sometimes just through wand waving and going, they could accidentally produce magic, but they couldn't control it. They couldn't determine what spell came out of it. It would just be completely random. And that's from Babbity Rabbity. Then in the Three Brothers, he continues on with it and talks a lot about how wizards and witches can kind of put their essence into a wand, guide the wand. The wand chooses the wizard, so therefore Whatever the wizard's intent is, that's the intent the wand brings on, which would very much explain like why Voldemort's wand is so willing to kill all these people, because that's the intent of its owner. And so if you had people intent on being, these kind of world dominating people, that perhaps they could like put that into the wand and the wand would pick up on that. Or if, their intent was to be the most powerful witch or wizard in history, the wand would pick up on that. And it would leave residual traces in the wand. And the wand would kind of build up magic. And you could kind of endue the wand with magical ability to produce spells, so that even if a muggle did pick it up, they would produce the spell that you intended for them to produce. I think that's what Dumbledore's done with Jacob's wand. I do believe Jacob is a muggle. I do not believe that he's a latent witch or wizard that just never got their invite to Ilverarmy. I believe that he is a muggle, and that Dumbledore has endued with his own magical abilities spells into his wand that he knows Jacob will need. And I think what we're going to find out in this movie more than any other thing about Dumbledore's secrets is how he learned to read the flow of time so well. We know that Grindelwald has this ability, and I think what we're going to find out is that Dumbledore learned it from Grindelwald and can do the same. So he knew what spells Jacob would need and put those into the wand so that Jacob would have them. The only other theory that I've got is about the Deluminator. I think it's a wonderful piece of wizardry invented by Dumbledore. It's definitely going to be in this movie. And I think that it is a transporter. I think that we see a scene where he is fighting Credence and they're kind of in this one spot and he has the Deluminator and he completely transports them to this other spot. And it's not an apparate, they're not apparating to another spot. And I think that's why Ron was able to kind of travel back to Harry, because I think that it puts you where you need to be. So what's going on in that battle that Dumbledore feels like he needs to be someplace else, I don't know. But he definitely uses the Deluminator. So that's my little fan theory on that. Not tied to the Tales of Beedle and Bard. Just that. So those are kind of my fan theories that I've got going out there. Do you have any? Let me know in the comments. And hopefully you're looking forward to seeing this movie. I think this is the most excited I've been for one of these three movies since they started coming out. So until next time, please make sure to like, comment, share with some friends, turn on notifications, do all that stuff. We'll be back to building soon. Till next time, happy building.